Hey guys, it's Sylvia from Backyard Brushes in Fountain City, Wisconsin, and it's that time of month. In this week's video, I am going to flip 3 items I found from the thrift store using Sonnet's Garden Bloom's July's Maker's Box. So let's just roll up our sleeves and let's get creating. In this month's box, we have Lefty by Connie, the painted photographer, and also Bath Time by the painted photographer. From Roycycle Decoupage, we have the Faded Botanica and also the Floral Ledger. From DIY Paints, we have Vintage Linen and Black Velvet, and from Fusion, Soapstone and Limestone, and of course, Sweet Pickins, we have the Flour Sack. There's the monthly napkin, and now the digital press, which I use in Project 3. For Project 1, I'm using a plant stand I picked up at the Goodwill for $5.99. I'm giving it 2 coats of the Soapstone by Fusion paint. Now, I decided to use Lantern by Sweet Pickins, which is a color or paint that we received last year in the box, and I liked it so much I ordered another container of it. And the milk paint is so easy to use. I just use a 1-to-1 ratio of water to paint. I let it sit for 10 to 20 minutes and it's ready. When using milk paint, the first coat doesn't go on the best, so you know you're going to have to give it 2 coats of paint. And that second coat is going to be like really soft and smooth. So if it's your first time using milk paint, don't worry about how poor the first coat looks. So after I get the first coat on, I'm just going to shoot it with the heat gun. The heat helps increase the chance of some chippiness. And hopefully my wood is still warm, and I'm just going to give it a full second coat of the Lantern milk paint. And again, I'm just going to apply heat to that second coat of paint. I used a sanding sponge and I went over the whole piece, and the milk paint came off rather easily. For the top part of the stand, I'm using liquid patina. I have Roycycle's paper. I cut out a square. I laid down a little bit of the patina on top. I misted the paper and I'm pressing it down where I'd like to place it, folding up the other half and using liquid patina to finish decoupaging the paper onto the plant stand. And misting the paper really helps when using the decoupage paper. It loosens up the fibers and it really does help minimize wrinkling in the long run. And I just gently use my fingers to press it down and smooth it out. Using the sanding sponge, I'm going in an up and down motion to get a clean edge. From the decoupage paper, it just separates really easily. So just gently up and down motion, I go all the way around the square and the paper just separates. Using DIY liquid patina, I'm just going to seal the decoupage paper, giving it thin, even coats, and it does dry clear. I chose DIY's clear wax to seal the project. The milk paint does need to be sealed, and I did not want to cover up any of that beautiful limestone that I have showing through the lantern. And after applying the wax, I just used a paper towel and I wiped off the excess wax. And that clear wax really does help seal the project, and it also leaves a beautiful sheen. Now, only if I could keep a plant alive so that I could use the stand, but I can't. So I'm going to place this stand for sale at my shop in Fountain City, Wisconsin. For project 2, I'm using this glass jug I found at the Goodwill for $2.99. I always pick up fun bottles when I find them, and it's got a nice little flat surface in one area of the jug. So I'm just going to use the heat gun to remove the price tag. I'm actually going to use the Flowers Sack, the Sweet Pickens milk paint that came in the box. And again, I'm just going to mix it up, a 1-to-1 ratio of powder to warm water, mix it thoroughly. You want it to be the consistency of like a melted milkshake. And then I'm just going to set it aside after it's all mixed up. And I let it sit for like 10 to 20 minutes so the pigments of the paint can pretty much saturate into or blend into the water for better coverage. And what I didn't show is I actually sprayed the bottle with Rust-Oleum clear coat so that the paint would have a surface to adhere to. And I actually painted the bottle with 2 coats of the Black Velvet by DIY. And now, just using Rust-Oleum white chalk paint, I'm going to paint that flat surface of the bottle. When using a decoupage paper, you do want that lighter paint underneath, or that lighter color underneath the decoupage paper to help the paper pop out more. Using the liquid patina by DIY, I'm going to apply the patina as my decoupage medium to the whole portion of the white section that I painted. And a little bit of the paint did come off. And again, I was using Rust-Oleum chalk paint. But again, I'm just going over it with the liquid patina, and I'm not too concerned about it being perfectly even or anything. I cut out one of the birds by the lefty, the paintings, the papers by Connie, the painted photographer, and she actually paints these papers by hand using DIY paint. And it's rice paper, so it's a little thicker and not as fragile as the decoupage paper from Royce. So I'm just placing it right on top of the liquid patina, using my fingers to press it down, then using liquid patina on top of the paper to seal the paper onto the jug. After I have it sealed, I'm just going to use the scissors to trim the paper, clipping the corners. I don't recommend doing this in the house, even though I am. However, I'm using a lighter and I'm just burning off the excess paper. The flame tends to burn the paper down, and it stops and goes out once it hits that decoupage medium. And yes, I do have water available if I were to lose control of this burn. I just like using the burn method because I like the jagged edges and the look that it gives the paper. I used liquid patina by DIY to seal the DIY paint and a second coating on top of the rice paper. And I apologize, after the liquid patina dried, I gave the jug 2 coats of a Flower Sack by Sweet Pickens, and I didn't get it on film. But I did get a lot of chippiness. So I went over it again and sealed it with the liquid patina to hopefully hold some of that chippiness down. Now I'm going in with DIY's dark wax, and I've just covered the whole jug in wax except for the rice paper. And using a paper towel, I'm wiping off all of that excess wax. And I'm just a fan of how that DIY dark wax brings out and enhances all the chippiness and goodness. Using my wax brush, I'm just going to go all the way around the edges of the rice paper, pushing in the wax to kind of frame the photo and blend it into the paint. Kind of hoping it helps enhance that vintage vibe and also helps the decoupage or the rice paper stand out more. And then I just use my paper towel to take off that excess wax and help push it in. And hopefully you can see some of that crackling and chippiness that we were able to achieve on the glass jug. For project 3, I'm using these painted garden shovels that I picked up at the Goodwill for $2.99. Using Rust-Oleum white linen, I am going to cover up that paint, and I use 2 coats so that it's not showing through. Once they're dry, I am using the Black Velvet by DIY to paint the back of the shovel, and it wasn't real rust, it was like a painted effect. The Black Velvet DIY paint covered the back of those metal shovels so well, I didn't even use a second coat. Using Soapstone by Fusion, I painted both handles, and it's a beautiful gray. I'm kind of a gray snob, and I love that gray. I then used liquid patina by DIY again as my decoupage medium, and I covered the front of the shovel. This is my first time using the digital press, and I printed out the mushrooms on a mix of Mulberry rice paper, and I used my laser printer. And I can link the printer that I use in the description box. And I just laid that paper right on top of the liquid patina, and I pressed down. And I just gently used my fingers to smooth out and make sure the paper was adhered to the shovel. I then gave the mushroom, or the top of the shovel, a second coating of the liquid patina. And I'm going to tell you guys, I am not a techie person, and for the second shovel, I wanted to use the other mushroom, but it was a little bigger than the metal portion of the shovel. So I went back to the printer and I printed out another page of the mushroom. But this time in the settings of the printer, so when I hit print, it pops up, and in the settings, I reduced the size of the paper to 85%. So here you can see my mushroom. It's kind of hard to see because I cut up part of the mushroom when I was cutting for the other one. It is smaller, and you can see on the edges of the paper how it reduced it by probably a half an inch to 3/4 of an inch on each side. And now my mushroom fits my shovel. So I'm just going to cut out my mushroom, and I'm going to use the exact same method using the liquid patina. I'm going to adhere it to the shovel, and I'm just going to see, look at it fits now. And I do have a little bit of the piece to the other mushroom on the bottom, but I was okay with that. So again, it was really simple to do. I just went into the settings on the printer when I hit print, and I just reduced it from 100% to 85%. And then using the liquid patina, I'm just going to adhere that mushroom right to the bottom of the shovel. Using my fingers, I press it down. I give the mushroom another coat. Using the sanding sponge, again, up and down motion, I'm going to go around the shovel to remove the excess paper. And I do want to show you that on top, at the very top of the mushroom here, as I'm coming around with it, I do get a slight rip. So I just want to show you that. It did tear lightly for me in the crevice at the top. But I am using that up and down motion and just kind of letting it rip and tear. It doesn't tear as easily as the decoupage paper. So just gently up and down, practicing my patience. This is where I slightly tear it when I was playing with it. And you can see some of that white paint sticking through the top. And I sanded the second mushroom using the up and down motion, and I had no problems. I chose DIY dark wax, and I went over the handle of the shovel. Well, actually, I did it over the handle of both shovels, but here you can see the difference in the light wax with the dark wax. And then I just wipe it off with the paper towel. And now I'm going to take a small brush with some wax, and I'm just going to dabble right on top and cover up that white from where my paper had ripped. And I'm just blending that wax right into the paper, and then I just kind of dapple and stiffle it right on down the edges of the shovel, outlining the paper on the shovel. I liked that effect it gave, so I did decide to do it with the second mushroom also. So as soon as I get around the whole shovel, just dappling it, pretty randomly all the way around, so I don't have like a perfect edge. And I'm just going to use the paper towel and blot off the excess wax. And again, I'm just repeating the same procedure, using the small brush, stifling on the wax around the edges of the shovel. And using the black wax, I'm just going to seal the black velvet. It is a DIY paint, clay-based, and it does need to be sealed. There are already holes on the handles of the shovel, so I chose like an ivory lace. So it could be an option as either decorative, or the shovels could be hung as decor. The holes are kind of small, so I took a piece of painter's tape and I just kind of cut it right through the middle. And then I took half of the painter's tape, or one of the strips, and I'm just going to use it to wind it tightly around the edge of the ribbon to get it really, really thin so that I can pull the ribbon through the hole. And I just kept twisting and twisting and twisting, trying to make it as small as I could, because the ribbon wouldn't fit through the hole by itself. So I'm just making a long, skinny, twisted piece of tape that's attached to the ribbon. And then I'm just going to string that ribbon right through the hole and then tie it in a knot and clip my edges. And I do the exact same process for the second shovel. And just a reminder to wash your hands after working with that black wax, because, well, let's just say it easily can get onto the lace and you might have to start over. And, well, let's just say I found out the hard way, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. I would love to know which project is your favorite. Mine was definitely the mushrooms. And have you tried the digital press yet? Because I think I'm obsessed. I love the prints, and I love the idea that I can print off as many papers as I want. I'm kind of selfish that way. So if you enjoyed this video and you found it inspirational, please hit subscribe below and follow me along on my creative journey. Thank you.